Hey guys, what's up? I'm going to do a still life painting outside today, and the way I've got the camera set so that you can see the palette and the canvas and the subject matter didn't really leave much room for myself in there. So, but you guys know what I look like, and that's not really important anyway. So, but I wanted to show you how you could use the same techniques that we've been using to paint landscapes. How you could apply those to still life painting, because this is still plein air painting for outside setting up still lives and that sort of thing. So you can see that I've set up a little arrangement of some apples and then some flowers just from outside, what's blooming right now. We've got some daffodils, and then there's some Bradford pear branches in there, and I'm going to be approaching it pretty much the same way. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of the ivory black tone, and I'm using a different kind of paper towel today. I went and got some of those shop paper towels that are for use. I got it in the auto section, and I really like the way it feels. You can see here it's a little bit more absorbent, a little bit tougher than the regular paper towels, so it's not leaving as many little shreds of paper on the canvas and that sort of thing, and it really, the paint just flows out of it really nicely. So if you're having trouble with your paper towels, I know some people expressed that they were, you might want to try buying some of these shop towels. They're really nice. So what we want to do for this tone is just put a little bit of we dip our paper towel down into our medium, which is my mixture of, I use Galkyd oil painting medium, and I mix it with 1/3 Gamsol paint thinner. So you could use linseed oil and just odorless mineral spirits, but I prefer the way the Galkyd feels, and I like the Gamsol paint thinner. So we want to put the paint on and then wipe it back off, and it doesn't have to be an even coat. You just want to make sure that you don't have a lot of paint left on your canvas, or it's going to start mixing with your subject matter. And then we've got our palette set up. I've got the 3 primaries across the top, the vibrant primaries. I've got cadmium red light, cadmium yellow light, and ultramarine blue. And then down the left side of the palette I've got burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and ivory black. And I see those 3 colors on the left side as like my earth tone primaries. So burnt sienna is like a dulled down red, yellow ochre is like a dulled down yellow, and black, ivory black, can be a dulled down version of a blue, especially when you put it around other warm colors. So this gives us a range of things that we can do, and I'll talk a little bit about that as I get into the painting here. But first, we don't want to concern ourselves too much with color. We want to look at value, and when I say value, I mean how dark and how light are different parts of our subject matter. So when you're outside composing a still life, you want to try to group your items together. You don't want your flower vase on one corner of the table, and then an apple on another corner, apple on another corner, and apple on another corner. You can see that I've sort of pulled the apples together and put them at the base of the flower arrangement, and sort of made a grouping of all the objects on the table. So that's important, because that'll help keep your design together. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to come in with our paper towel and dip it down into the medium. And we want to go into our general dark. This is ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. This is a nice dark because you can kick it to the warm side or to the cool side depending on how much burnt sienna or ultramarine blue you use. And now I want to go ahead and put my arrangement in here. And I'm not too concerned right now with exact drawing. I'm more concerned with just some big shapes. So we can see here we have this, we have the shape of this, the leaves coming out here. And make sure you're dipping into your medium as you go here. I'm trying to keep this just a little on the warm side because there's a lot of warm colors in the darks. You can see there's like dark browns in there. So and try to pick out just the big pattern. So I'm just going to kind of grab my shadows of my apples here with this dark color. And then I've got the other apple out here. And I've got some directional lines here of the table. And I'm not going to try to draw the whole table because I mainly want to focus on the objects in the still life. So you know, if I were wanting to get the table in, then I would back up and do a different type of painting. But because I'm zoomed in here, I want to pay attention to mainly the objects. We can let the background even be a little abstract. That's a little bit too much burnt sienna, so I'm just going to come right back in with the ultramarine and dull it up a little bit. Now there's areas in here where my flowers are going to be, and I want to try to leave them to some extent. I don't want to paint any super dark around them. Or I don't want to paint anything really dark where the flowers are. So I'm kind of painting around them a little bit. Something over here. Kind of leaving the spot where I want the flowers. So see that I'm not too concerned with drawing exactly. I just want to look at some big shapes here. And I'm not really paying too much attention to the background. I'm going to let that kind of be that gray right now. See how I use that corner of the table there to pull your eye back around into the composition. And we can pinch down on the paper towel if you want to get some smaller darks in there. You can pinch down and use the edge of the paper towel. Use your finger. And at this point I'm just kind of looking for the energy of the subject, the movement. Notice that I'm careful not to place the subject right in the center of the canvas. I off-center it just a little bit. That makes things interesting. So now that I've got my dark pattern in there, I want to go back and look and see if I can pick out some darker darks. So for this we're going to use the same color, just the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna. And we're going to be using a little bit of medium, but we can get the paint a little thicker this time, and this will make the paint a little bit more opaque, which is going to make it look a little darker. So make sure you're dipping into that paint and really just loading it up onto the paper towel. And now I want to look and find where my darkest darks are. And there's some little areas down here right where the vase wraps around the apples. It's pretty dark. And there's some little shadows right in here where in between these stems where these leaves all get bunched together. And then there's even some little darks that are the branches here of these branches of the Bradford pear tree. Just draw them in just. There's a nice dark here too down in this corner that's sort of the side of the table. So I'm going to brush that in, wipe that in. Okay, so we do our darks and then we hit the darker darks, and at this point we should be able to kind of see the main design of the painting. So you're starting to see the big shapes come together, and we don't want to backtrack too much and have to change anything. So you want to take your time at this point to look and say, well, does it feel balanced? You know, is there a clear path for my eye to travel to the center of interest and then around the painting? So you see that there's ways for, we've almost created little bridges for your eye to move from one area of the painting to the next. So now we're going to go back in with some local color, So that would be the yellow for the flowers, the green of the leaves here, and the red of the apples. We're going to pick out some colors that are sort of representative of a general color of that area. So so you want to try to look, and there might be some lighter yellows and there might be some darker yellows in the flowers, but can I look at it and can I figure out what is the overall color? And remember, in these beginning stages, just like when you're painting the landscapes, squint down until your eyes are almost closed, and that can really help you see what the main shapes are and the main masses of color. So I'm going to go right in here with a nice bright cadmium yellow light, and then because I want to save some of my brightness for the end of the painting, I'm going to come into this yellow ochre color and mix that right in there, and that's going to give us a nice vibrant yellow, but not something that's too vibrant, so that I still, so I have some room to go brighter at the end if I want. And just with the paper towel and a big bunch of paint at this point, you want to start putting some paint on your paper towel. I'm just going to pop in just the general shape of these flowers. So they kind of have these ones from the side are sort of shaped like this right here. So I've got several of those over here. And then as they turn around here, we start to see more of the front of them, so there's more of a star shape to them. So again, I'm not going after exact drawing, I'm just squinting down and looking at these big shapes. And then over here they're actually sticking out the other way. And see how I'm kind of grouping these flowers together a little bit, so we've got a group here and then a group here. I'm not making them evenly spaced out. I want your eye to be able to flow from one group of light to a group of darks to a group of lights. So try to mass together your big shapes. I know you hear a lot about this and you can read a lot about it, but so it might not really make sense until you actually put it into action. So see if you can tie your shapes together. So for example, right here there's some of these lighter blooms, and I want to bring them in and right across so your eye can flow around from the light shape to the other light shapes. So I'm just going to put in a couple little spots of yellow here. There's not actually smaller flowers there, but I want to just suggest a little bit of depth, as if maybe there's some flowers back in the distance that are behind all this. So you can see that start to create a little depth in the piece. So to get this, there's a light color for these blooms, and when I squint down till my eyes are almost closed, it's sort of a lavender grayish color. It's not too far from this gray color that we have back here, and I want to be careful because there could be a tendency to make it too light, and we don't want to, I talk about this a lot. You don't want to exhaust all your possibilities, so you want to work your way to your brightest brights and your darkest darks. So we're going to mix up kind of a creamy lavender color by going in. I've got some cad red light and a little bit of this yellow ochre, and a little tiny bit of ultramarine blue. I'm going to grab some more yellow ochre. This is making kind of a cream color. Now I'm going to add a little bit more ultramarine blue and cad red. So we're basically making cream, and then I'm adding a little bit of purple to it. So I'm looking for something like right in this area right in here. Just a little bit more blue. And so you see that I was using a little bit too much red here, but instead of trying to fight all that red to get to the color, I went beside it and just mixed the new color right beside it, because I could probably use this red when I'm painting the apples. And if I'm, if I'm using that and I'm trying to make that color into this color, it's going to take a lot more white than I actually need. So now that I've got this color on my paper towel, I'm going to start and I'm going to build that bridge of light shapes. These flowers are shaped just a little bit differently than the yellow ones. They're a little bit more delicate. So just kind of putting them in there with the paper towel, just focused on big shapes. Go a little bit more lavender. So I'm going to add a little bit more ultramarine blue to make it just a little bit more purplish. Okay. So you see how your eye can follow that light over into here and around. Now we want to move on. Now I do the same thing. This is a way of painting the way that I'm teaching you to paint here with the paper towel and using the burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, and then moving on to the local colors. You could apply this to almost any subject matter. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to go ahead and show you how to do a still life with this process, because it really applies to almost anything you want to do. So we want to keep going here with the local colors, and I want to move right in on the apples and get them laid in, because they're an important color note for this composition. So I'm going to get a new paper towel, and I'm going to go in with this reddish color and a little bit of that yellow that I used before in the flowers. So I'm using my colors that I already mixed to make new colors. And anytime you can do that, it's a good idea, because it'll help with the color harmony of the final piece. So now I don't want the darker red on the apples, and I don't want the bright light yellow. I want somewhere in between. So I've got kind of this nice kind of medium red color. And I'm just going to look at the apple, and it's a different shape. It's not exactly a circle, so it's important to pay attention to that. It sort of gets wide here and then comes down to a point there. So we want to pay attention to these shapes. Same thing here. This is kind of a different shape. It kind of comes out here. So I'm massing in the shapes here. Same thing here. Massing in the shapes. And I'm going to move from there into the green. I don't want to finish any one part. I want to keep it all at the same step, you know. That'll give harmony to the piece too. So I want to go in and make a nice green that is yellow, cadmium yellow light, ultramarine blue. Make a nice rich green, not too dark and not too light, and just start putting that in. I want to add just a little bit of white to it, because there is sort of a lighter color to these, where the sky is reflecting on them. And then I just want to draw some of them out here. I'll make it a little darker here, and I'm going to hit some of these darker greens right into here. Right where the flowers bunch up and sort of block the light from getting to it. And then there's a couple lighter greens. There's a couple lighter greens of places where the leaves come straight out and over the vase. Come back around like that. And see, the paper towel's not allowing me to get too detailed, so it's forcing me to focus on these big shapes, which is what you want to be doing. And so now I want to go in and get some of the color of this green and brown. You can see the green through the vase, so it's a little, it's darker. When I squint my eyes I can see that, so I'm going to make a darker green. I'm going to go mix my green and mix it back into my general dark here, the burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. And that's going to give me a nice dark olive green. So we start to get the feeling that the vase is transparent and we can see the green leaves through it. And then there's also a nice sort of a purplish color where the glass is reflecting some of the color of the sky. So, and this is a little bit lighter than the other areas of the vase, so I'm squinting down to see that. And it's also right around the edge of the vase. There. The tabletop is light. I'm going to use yellow ochre and burnt sienna to make a nice kind of a dulled down orange. And I want to use a nice bit of white here. There's that, you know, a lot of light reflecting down onto this table. And I can see that when I squint my eyes. I can see that this tabletop is one of the lightest areas, aside from these areas right up in here. So I'm just a hair darker than my white flowers. And then I'm just going to real quick, just like when we do the landscapes, you want to spend a lot of time mixing the color and making sure that the value is right, but then when you actually go to apply it, you can be kind of free and really use some creative movements with the way that you're using the paper towel. And then there's sort of some darker, a little bit darker areas in the table that are kind of purplish. But they're not too dark. I want to be careful not to make them too dark. And there's kind of a shadow right back behind it here. Just a subtle shadow because we're working with kind of diffused light. There's not a lot of sunlight out here right now. But there's enough just to cast some little shadows on the left side of my objects here. So and again, I'm not obsessing over it, what if my colors are right or not. I'm looking more at the value and how dark and how light is an area. So I want to go ahead and suggest something happening back here, and you can see that the grass is green and it's really close in color to the green of the foliage here. So what I want to do is I want to lighten it up a little bit so that the still life stands out from it. Because if I make it exactly the color that it is, it's going to blend too much with this green. So I'm gonna cool it off, and when I say cool it off, I mean I'm gonna mix more of a bluish green, and then I'm gonna add a lot of white to it. So what we'll get is a nice kind of a lighter green. And this is going to help kind of showcase some of these warm colors in the still life. So if I had chosen a warmer green like an olive green, it wouldn't make these warm colors pop as much. So because I'm using this cooler green color, it really lets the still life pull forward. And watch how I use this now to draw around the foliage and the flowers. So just like in the landscape paintings, when we were negative painting, we were using the sky to create areas where you could see through the trees. Now we're doing the same thing with this background color. And just to add a little bit of variation to it, I am going to add some warm colors to it, but not a lot, just a little bit. And when we're painting landscapes, we can kind of get away with just kind of leaving things blocked in real bold. But when you're painting a still life, it does require a little bit more attention to modeling. So you'll see now when I switch to the paint brushes, which, you know, generally I want you to try to get the whole canvas covered in values and big colors. You know, we did the dark and the darker dark, and then our local colors. We might want to hit just a couple little highlights on these little flowers, and then we'll move on to the brushes and we'll do some more detail work. So I'm taking a white now that's just a little tiny bit creamy, but mostly white, and I want to hit just a couple little areas in here where the sun is really reflected off of these little flowers. And I can come out over the background with a couple, even up in here. Okay, so now I want to switch to some brushes, but we want to keep them big. I don't want you working with real small brushes, especially in these beginner videos, the beginner demos. Try to keep them like a size 6 or 4, no smaller than a 4 or 6, and then you can have some 10s, some size 12, some size 8s. You can see these are flat bristle brushes. And try to get in the habit of holding your brush like this. I know it's really tough at first, you'll be frustrated. You don't always have to hold it like this. There will be some times where you want to get up and do some little detail work. But when you're first starting, again, I really recommend that you hold your brush like this. And I'm going to squeeze out a little bit more white paint. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but I always whip up my white paint. So I put out a little bit of paint, or I put out a lot of white paint, and then I take a little bit of the medium and work it right into the paint, and that just softens it up a little bit. And you can do this with a palette knife. Usually I work with my palette laying down. I just put it up like this for the demonstration, so it'd be easier to whip up the white. But that really softens that white paint, and it makes it easier to apply. Makes color mixing a lot easier. When you're painting outside, especially if it's chilly out, there's a tendency of the paint to stiffen up, so that'll help with that too. Now we want to, just like with the landscape, we want to look at our subject matter and say, okay, you know, what are the main things that make this, you know, visually, that make this interesting? And so when I look out there, I squint my eyes and I see there's a nice dark shape here of the vase, and then there's these bright little pops of color on the apples, you know, and then there's nice dark shadows. So we've got mostly the mid-tones laid in here. Remember, we didn't go too light or too dark, except we did hit a couple highlights on the flowers. But we want to come back in with some dark colors, and we can do this with the burnt sienna, the ultramarine blue, and make a nice dark color. And we don't want it to be absolutely, you know, as dark as we can get yet. So I'm going to mix just a little bit of this cad red light and just a little bit of white into it. It's going to gray it up just a little bit. And we can pick out some shadowed areas around these apples. Right where they hit the wood here, there's sort of a dark spot. That's where the stem comes out right there, so there's a little shadow right there, so just put that in with one little brush stroke. Same thing right here. And we're not getting too carried away with detail or anything. Same thing with this one. It's sort of. So now we're starting to shape up the apples just a little bit. There's also some nice darks back in here. I can use these darks to shape up these flowers a little bit. And see how holding the brush there, and I'm using, just like when we were painting trees, you know, we can control how wide the brush stroke is by how hard we're pushing. So if I start and I'm pushing kind of hard, and then as I kind of come down here, you can see that as I let off, you know, as I let off the pressure, the brush stroke's getting thinner. So we can draw things out to a little point like that. And you know, you don't have to do that slowly either. You can get in, you can kind of get in there and do a couple real fast, just like that. Remember to have fun, and you know, try to paint with vigor. I think when you get in there and you get some, you know, some energy to your brush stroke, it really helps. There's a nice dark purple. I'm going to lay out some more blue. If you start getting low on your palette on a color, don't hesitate to lay out more of it, because you don't want to start skimping and trying to use other colors when you really need one color and you're just not getting it because you're not laying out enough. So I'm going to make this nice, there's a bluish color. And I'm dipping my paint down in my medium as I go. That's making the paint flow from the brush. And I'm using lots of paint, you know, make sure you're scooping up enough paint. Nice purple color that I was getting in that vase there. And I want to come back and kind of accentuate it in spots here. Now I want to see, there's a dark yellow and a light yellow to these flowers. So we laid in the medium area. So if I mix up a little bit of a darker yellow than what we originally had, so I'm using yellow ochre, almost straight yellow ochre, then I can use this for my dark. So right in here at the end where the daffodil comes out, it's darker right in there. Use that yellow ochre, I'll add just a touch of black to it, which is going to make it kind of a greener, a little bit greener, but more importantly a little bit darker. Right in the center there. There's some dark to it. Over here it happens right there. Some dark here. And then I wash my brush out, so make sure you've got your metal brush washer with your paint thinner in it. And make sure when you're doing these, delicate strokes and you're, getting closer to finishing your painting, that you're keeping your brush nice and clean, because you don't want your colors getting mixed up. And then I'm going to go right in and use a nice bright yellow cad yellow light for the light yellow. So this is going to be areas where the sunlight's hitting the flowers. So this side, there's a little rim of light right in there. This is a very powerful color, so you want to be careful how you don't use too much of it. There's a nice little yellow right there. Over here it kind of catches light right there on that little part of the flower there. And then there's a lighter yellow too, but it's a little bit more green because I think it's in some shadow. So for these leaves that are, or petals that are kind of hanging out here, they've got like a green or two. I'm going to add a little bit of the yellow ochre just to dull it down just a little bit. And see how I'm not working it too much? I try to look where I want the brush stroke, and then I just put it in there, and then I leave it alone. So I'm not getting back and mixing up my colors too much. I want to keep them kind of fresh, If I get back in there and start working them too much, it'll start to ruin the effect of vibrancy that I'm going after. So. There's some places where you can kind of see the flowers, they pop through in little spots. But I'm not painting the whole flower. And then I'm going to take this color and just pop a little bit around, just to kind of add variety in here, and it moves your eye around. And now I want to look and say, well, this greenish yellow color, that's very close to the light color down here on the apples. So if I just add a little bit of white to it, then it becomes my lighter color for my apples. So by using the same color that I've used in the flowers on the apples, it helps tie my colors in. And real quick, I want to look down here and I see the shape of this light. It's like, it goes like that, and then it goes like that. And then I want to move on to the next one. I don't want to get too carried away with it. This one, it kind of comes around here, and then there's some places where it comes down like that. So. And then on to the next one. We've got a little bit of light there, and then this whole side is nice and light. And then I can go right back in and just kind of mix it just a little bit to get it to blend. Okay. While I'm doing some lighter areas, there's a little lip on this glass that I want to go ahead and get while I've got this light color on my brush. And it's just going to be a light bluish color. That's too light. I'm going to go back in. Kind of hit that where that light's coming through there, and that might be a little bit too much, so I can come back and shape it up. Just wipe up the paint off my brush and just come back and shape it up just a little bit. Now I want to paint a little bit more of this background coming through near the top of the flowers. And so I want to make this nice light green color again, just close. That's close to it right there. And then I really want to come back and sort of cut in, because there's not as many leaves up here. I can bring this forward a little bit. And I want to pay attention to the shape of the flowers and paint around the flowers with this light color. And there's a back side of this flower right here that's sort of a cone shape. Sort of a darker greenish value. Sort of shaped like that. And that's where the stem is going to come up too. Comes up like that. And I want to draw some of these little, I'm going to make a nice purple, a dark purple using cadmium red light and ultramarine blue. And then I want to draw a little bit of these twigs up in here. I'm going to do that by holding the brush between my forefinger and my thumb. And you can see I've got a bunch of paint on there. And then I'm just going to just hold it like this and just move my, you can see how I can twist the brush and it's going to make the shape of the branch. And again, I'm starting with some more pressure on the brush, and as I pull away, I'm getting less pressure on it so that the brush stroke's getting smaller. Same thing over here. This is a lot like drawing just tree branches, because essentially they are little tree branches. They're from the Bradford pear tree. And one has sort of a more reddish tone to it, so I'm alternating my colors that I'm using on them. Just a little bit lighter value there. And then I've got one that comes out right here and just comes straight out in front of all this stuff, so that's going to start creating some depth. Do that. There's some little lines down here, and we can use those to kind of make this area a little bit more graphic. When I say graphic, I mean just a little bit more detailed, but not so detailed that we're taken away from the center of interest. So just adding, kind of decorating the area a little bit. And there's some little dark lines that are kind of a purple color right along this edge of this apple. That, like that there. Same thing, I'm going to use this cad red light and ultramarine blue, and I'm going to make a nice kind of a dark purple right in here. Outline that. And then there's a shadow down there, but it needs to be a little lighter. I've got it too dark. So we're going to add that purple there. And we can even add some blue to those shadows, because the sky above them is blue, so there's this nice kind of a blue color getting reflected back down into these shadows now. So, and this is not something that I have to paint over the whole area. I just kind of pop it in, and it gives it a little variation. And we can even play with colors in the shadows. Let's say I want to put a little bit of the red that's in the apples into the shadow area. I can do that. I just have to make sure it's the right value. So I mix up a red, and let's do it right down in here. So see, we don't have to have the shadow be one color. We can play with the color as long as we're paying attention to the value. And there's some nice kind of lyrical fun shadows that are coming off of these little leaves off of the daffodils. Come around like that. There's one comes down there, and you know, get some energy into this. You don't have to make everything so perfect. If I want to draw a little bit in these flowers to kind of bring out their shape, I can do that with a little bit of a darker color, sort of an orange, darker orangish color. Lighter yellow color. So I'm working my darks and then my lights. Notice again how I'm working all around the painting. I'm not working one area too much. And at this point, we really want to be scooping up the paint and putting some thick paint on there and having fun with it. Don't shortchange yourself, because you'll get frustrated. You won't be able to get the paint to move around like you want it to. It takes a lot of paint to paint a painting. And there's just a hint of some modeling on these stems. There's a little bit of light, so I'm just going to take a little bit of this light color, come across there. See that? And we can draw some stems on this apple down here. There's a little stem right here. See if you can get it in one brush stroke. You know, think about how you need the brush stroke to be shaped, and then see if you can move the brush to get it to be shaped like that. And there's even some little highlights down here on these apples, a little shiny. And this is where it pays off to, you know, hold off on your bright colors, because if I had made the apples too bright to begin with, I'd never get this little highlight to work on them. Taking some darker green and suggesting some areas where there's some shadows hitting these greener leaves here. I want to come back and hit some of these little light colored flowers right on the ends of where these stems are. Right at the ends of these branches. And I don't have to do this exactly where the flowers are. I can do it where it looks good on the painting. And that's the essential, you know. One of the most important things to grasp is that we don't care really what things look like. We care what our painting looks like. We're not going to put them... there's a great quote, Charles Mavalli. He said, we're not going to put the shapes where they are, of course. We're going to put them where they look good in the painting. And I love that. That speaks volumes about what it means to really paint. Because ultimately, in the end, it's not about the subject matter. It's about what you did with it. Just sort of suggest where that water line is with a sort of a dark line, and then there's a warmer color in that vase too, down in here, but it's not super bright, so I want to be careful that I don't make it too bright. It's just a little bit lighter than the rest of the area. So you can see they're starting to create more transparency in the vase. And then that light violet color really comes up here and sort of describes this area down there. I'm going to try to get this vase to be somewhat symmetrical. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I don't want to have it too wonky because it'll be distracting. And the sun's coming out a little stronger now, and it's sort of putting more shadows back here that I like, so I'm going to pay attention to that and sort of darken that area back there. It really shows that our light's coming from this direction. Same thing with this. There's a lighter green here where the sunlight's hitting the ends of these. Now you see here I'm holding it more like a pencil, I'm holding the brush more like a pencil, but I'm still using my whole arm, so when I need to, to go this way with the brush stroke, sometimes I'll hold it like this, sometimes I'll hold it like this, other times I'll hold it like this when I'm doing vertical lines. So experiment with holding the brush different ways and seeing what kind of marks you can make with it. There's some nice light greens down in here in the vase too. They're not too light. I don't want to make them too light because they'll pop out too much. So I want to remember to keep them kind of toned down, but they're really kind of the lightest light in there. So where the sunlight's coming out and hitting some of those stems down in the water. And I want to get some of this tone in here that's not quite as light as the brightest bright. Somewhere these shadows, where these little flowers are in shadow. I'm going to use some out here too to just move your eye around the composition. And then there's a nice little pink color. A nice light pink color in those flowers too, so just little spots of it. That's going to look nice with that with that green background. And there aren't any flower petals down here, but just for the sake of moving your eye around the painting, I'm going to pretend like some of these lighter flower petals fell off and are scattered around the table here. It's going to create interest down here and just help move your eye around. There's a green color in these apples too that's right in here, and it's sort of a yellowish green, but I want to make sure I don't get it too light because then it won't stay in the shadow like I want it to. So it's kind of some reflected light that's bouncing up off of the table into the shadowed side. And there's a nice dark red, so I want to take my red and I'm going to mix it with ultramarine blue, make a purple, but I want to lean it definitely towards the red side and even add a little bit of black to deepen it up. Yeah. And then I want to come right down this side of here, this apple. Really draw in that darker tone there. And then there's sort of some other areas where I can use this same color. I'm going to make it even a little darker. So we're just using black and cadmium red to make this. Kind of comes right in there. see how I've used the colors while they're on my brush. I use, I paint one flower, one apple, then I move on to the next apple, and then I move on to the next apple, so that all the apples have a similar colors in them, and I'm not having to remix the colors each time I come back. So I'm going to take some blue now. Just because those apples are so warm, I want to find a little area where I can sneak some cool color into them. So there's kind of this nice blue right in here, right around where the stem comes out. I can pop that in. And I can get a little bit descriptive with these lines on these apples if I want to, and just draw just a little bit of the form. Just a little bit. I don't want to get too carried away there. And then there's a dark brown. But it has the sunlight on it, so it's not too dark. But it's the part of the table. And draw it in. See, when I know the table's a dark brown color, but if I painted this too dark brown, then it wouldn't look like the sunlight's hitting it. So I got to be careful about what value I'm using. It's also right there, it's the same color. As I'm adding these finishing touches, I'm just going to be adding some darks and lights to help kind of unify the design a little bit. I want to express how excited I am to know that so many people are benefiting from this technique and utilizing the paper towels and the massing in of the dark shapes in their paintings. It's really exciting. And I'm going to be featuring a painting at the end of this video that I noticed on an artist's Instagram page, and I really liked the piece, and I wrote on there how much I enjoyed the painting, and then they wrote back and said that they're really excited that I liked the painting because they had actually painted it after watching some of my videos, and that things really clicked after watching the videos. So I'd love to see what you're working on. If you've utilized the techniques that I've been talking about and you're working on stuff, if you want to send some images to me, you can email them to me at kyle.buckland@gmail.com. I'd love to see what you're working on. If you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed yet, if you click subscribe and hit the little bell icon for notifications, you'll get an email when I upload a new video. I plan on doing one of these a week. And if you want to keep up with me on Facebook and Instagram, you can search me on there, Kyle Buckland. I've got a couple links down below in the description. One is to my fine art website where you can view and purchase my finished oil paintings. And also the other link down there is the Patreon page where if you want to become a patron of the channel and help support the channel, you can do that. You can sign up there, so you can go check that out. And I just really appreciate it. Like I said, it really means a lot to me to know that I'm able to deliver this information to you all in a way that's easy to understand, but without watering it down too much. I feel like there's sort of a void of, there's not a whole lot of beginner information that really taps into some basic principles that are important for down the line. I feel like a lot of times it's either can be over complicated information for beginners, or it's just watered down so much that it's not really applicable when you really start painting. So I'm trying to fill that void and create some videos that not only talk about some very basic principles, but also are not too watered down, so that you're able to really apply these even when you start to get into a more advanced level of painting. So I'm getting close now, and I talk about this. You want to step back from your work. take a little time to let it breathe, let yourself breathe, step back 15-20 feet sometimes, see what your work looks like from a distance, and don't get too caught up with making it look exactly like the subject matter, or even finishing it for that matter. You know, finishing a painting is subjective, and it's very easy to overwork a painting, and I would much rather underwork a painting than overwork it. So I want to encourage you in these beginning videos to really just practice letting go of the control and the need to finish things. See if you can find a place where, you know, you're somewhat happy with the work that's on the canvas, and then stop painting on it and see if you can come back to it in a little while and see if it doesn't look satisfactory. So, there's something to be said for the spontaneity and the freshness in a study that you can never really get back once you lose it. Things happen fast when you first start painting. There's a lot going on. You're moving big shapes around, but the process really slows down near the end, where you want to be taking your time and putting on a few brush strokes and then stepping back and seeing what you think. That's a good way to make sure you're not overworking things, is take some time to slow down at the end of the painting and watch the progression a little bit more intensely. There's just a little hint of a reflection of these apples in the vase. It's just kind of a little warm tone down there, so I'm just going to pop that in. I don't like that dark there. Yeah, it's a good thing about, you know, painting. You can come back in and work right over top of something and fix it if you don't like it. So I'm going to work a little bit of this cool blue color of the vase up into the flowers a little bit. And I'm probably going to stop right there. Like I said, the process that I go through to finish a painting is a little bit more in depth, and I'll talk about that later when I offer my advanced painting videos. But you know, for all intensive purposes, you could stop at any stage and call it finished, because it's really subjective. And I've seen some wonderful paintings that were, you know, obviously done very quickly, and I don't think that ever, you know, I don't think that it's a problem to stop prematurely, especially when you're first starting, because like I stress a lot that it's important to get started and to make paintings, and you can learn about finishing paintings and what degree of finish you want to take them to a little later. But I really want to encourage you to get out and try to just utilize the idea of nailing these big shapes and big broad areas of color, and not focusing too much on detail. And be expressive. Paint things you love. Have fun when you're painting them, and that'll come through the work, and the people viewing the work will see that you enjoyed the process, and then they'll enjoy viewing the painting. So thanks again so much for watching, and we'll see you next week with some new videos. Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks so much for watching my plein air still life video. I'm going to be sharing a couple paintings at the end of this video. I'll share a picture of the still life painting. But then the next painting that I'm going to be sharing is a painting by an artist named Caroline Green. And you can check out her Instagram at Art Caroline Green, and that's Greene. I saw this painting on her Instagram account and I really liked it and commented on it, and she replied back that she was very happy that I liked it because she had actually painted it after watching a couple of my videos, and she said she felt like all the information really made something click in her brain. And so Caroline, if you're watching, thanks so much for letting me feature this. I think it's a wonderful example of how to mask together your dark shapes and lead your eye to the center of interest. So it's a beautiful work. So if you guys out there watching are utilizing these techniques in your own work and you want to share what you're doing with me, you can email me images at kyle.buckland@gmail.com, and I might even feature some more work here on the channel. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week with some more videos.